I plan to go from Munich to Salzburg, 2 hours south, easy. But what happens if you keep going? Let's find out. There are a few things that shape how you experience a city, like walkability, how it feels to move through the streets, street life, the rhythm of everyday life, and places to pause where the city lets you breathe for a while. Those things together, that's the Travel Without Chaos Index. 3 dimensions, each one scored out of 5, and by the end of this video you'll know exactly how Munich, Salzburg and Trieste score. On the map, it's almost a straight line south, Munich up in the flat Bavarian basin, Salzburg where the land starts to climb, and Trieste right at the bottom, where Italy runs out into the sea. 3 countries on that line, Germany, Austria, Italy, but you cross the borders without stopping, no barrier, no passport, just the landscape changing under the train. But a map only tells you how far apart places are, it doesn't tell you how they feel. And that part only really begins once you stop looking at the map and start walking. Munich arrives easily, that's the first thing. You step out of the station and the city just opens in front of you, flat, wide and clearly signposted. And you start walking without having to think about how. The pavements are broad and you cover a lot of ground before you notice. Munich doesn't feel as big as it is. You only feel the size of it in your legs at the end of the day. Not every street feels the same though. The wide, monumental ones, really grand, keep their distance, closed ground floors, high windows. Turn off them and the city opens up again. In the center, most people are on their way somewhere. The life that gathers in places, and the streets in between carry you along. That's the rhythm here, not empty, moving. Viktualienmarkt is one of those rooms, an open-air market right in the middle of the old town. The pace shifts, people slow down, they eat standing up and talk without being in a hurry. And of course the beer gardens, long tables, strangers sitting together, noise spilling out into the open air. It works, and yes, it's wonderfully Bavarian. Munich street life doesn't spread evenly, it collects, and where it collects, it's generous. The Englische Garten doesn't sit at the edge of Munich, it runs straight into the middle of it, and at some point the street becomes the park you cross in without quite noticing where. And if you walk far enough in, it almost turns into forest, the city slipping away behind you. So that's Munich, easy to read, easy to move through. We'll take a look at the scores later, now it's time for the next city. You get on the train and Munich falls away quickly, the suburbs, then flat land and wide sky for a while. Then the hills start. Slowly at first, then not slowly. The view narrows, the light changes, and the flat country you've been walking on all this time tilts up into something else. By the time the train pulls in, the mountains are right there in the window and something has shifted. It's Salzburg. The old town is small, you can cross it in 15 minutes. Pressed between the river on one side and the rock on the other, but it doesn't feel cramped. If you cross the bridge to the right bank, the postcard thins out. Along Linzergasse, it's still old, narrow streets, but the doors are open and people are moving at an everyday pace. A market, an ordinary street, people with somewhere to be. It's the same city, it's just more everyday. You don't have to plan the pauses here. You don't go looking for them, you pass them and then you stop. People gather along the Salzach, on the banks, on the benches or wherever there's room to sit. Each part you find adds something. The longer you walk, the less Salzburg feels like only the old town. We'll take a look at the scores later, but now it's time to get on the train again. 5.5 hours, one change, up through the Alps and down the other side. For a long while it's mountains and tunnels, the same grey-green country sliding past. You stop watching the window after a while, even though it's so beautiful. And then, somewhere past the border, the land lets go. The mountains flatten, the light gets harder, and the land opens up. You can feel the sea before you see it. It's Trieste. Trieste just appears, grand, slightly windswept with buildings that belong in Vienna. But the thing you notice isn't only the architecture, it's that the city is being used from the inside. A barber has pulled a chair out onto the pavement, a tiny bar with a coffee machine where people stop for a standing espresso and a few words and then go. Children, grandparents and everyone in between. You see it on every corner. Nobody arranged it, it's just how the street works. But not every street here is polished, and the smaller ones are the least predictable. But that unevenness is part of what makes Trieste interesting to walk, not something to smooth over. The big square, Piazza Unita, imposing on three sides, then open straight onto the sea, gives you plenty of room to pause. But it's not the only place. Small parks tucked between buildings, benches along the way, cafe chairs outside almost every bar and hole in the wall. Places to pause turn up everywhere, not just where you'd expect them. And if you're anything like me, you'll find yourself slowing down without deciding to. Not because it's quiet, because it isn't, but because you just want to be part of it. That's Trieste, nothing smooth over, and completely alive. So, Munich, Salzburg and Trieste walked. Time to lay them side by side, one dimension at a time. Walkability. Munich takes this one. Flat, wide streets and easy to navigate. Salzburg and Trieste land a point behind, each in its own way. Salzburg, small and easy to hold in your head, always clear where you are. Trieste a bit uneven in patches, but that's also part of what makes Trieste interesting to walk. Street life. Trieste sits right at the top. The espresso bars, people drawn out into the street, a city used from the inside. Munich and Salzburg share the same number here, and neither wears it the same way. Munich, a far bigger city than the other two, gathers its life in rooms, markets, beer gardens. Salzburg's everyday runs through the whole city, Altstadt included. It's present, but never intense. And places to pause, the one dimension where nothing separates them, all three top the scale, each in its own way. Salzburg has height and water and southern views. Trieste gives you a chair facing the street and no one rushing you out of it. And Munich keeps a park right in the middle of itself. Add it up and the totals land close together. On paper, barely any distance between them, but walking them tells a different story. Because the trip moves through three completely different moods. Munich is ease, a city that's worked everything out so you don't have to. Salzburg is stillness, small, vertical, holding its breath long enough for you to catch yours. And Trieste is life, unpolished, lived in, used from the inside out. I planned for Munich to Salzburg, but I decided to keep going to Trieste, and that changed how I remember the whole journey. The line on the map brings them together, but the walking tells them apart. And maybe that's why you keep going, not to tick 3 countries off a list, but to feel a place change under your feet, one city at a time, all the way down to the sea. Have you been, or do you live there? I'd love to hear.